Good evening, everyone. You are very welcome to another coach development webinar from Ulster GA in association with O'Neill Sports on developing a club coaching philosophy with a focus on long-term development. My name is Garreth Thornton. I'm the Provincial Club Coaching and Games Development Officer in Ulster GA, and I'll be delivering the webinar this evening. Just a couple of housekeeping rules as normal. Please keep your camera turned off and stay muted. The chat box is available, so I will be asking questions throughout. So if feel free to message into the chat box and engage as much as we can. The webinar is being recorded and will be sent out to everyone in the coming days. So the importance of developing a club coaching philosophy with a focus on long-term development and coach buy-in. So the outcomes of this evening's webinar: what is a club coaching philosophy? The what, the why, and the how of a club coaching philosophy. Long-term development in terms of the club, the coach, and the player. So we're going to look at how club coaching philosophy can assist in the long-term development of the club, the coach, and the player, and then coach engagement and coach buy-in. So just in the chat box there, if you could take 30 seconds, and if you could just go into the chat box and answer the following question: what is a club coaching philosophy in your opinion? Okay, look, I'm not going to start going through all of the answers in the chat box, but see some of their player pathway, a joint approach to coaching in the club, what we want to achieve and how we do it, an agreed way of coaching and player development, what you stand for. Okay, so excellent. Lots of very good answers coming through, and probably a lot of the stuff that you're coming through with there is a lot of the stuff that I will be touching on this evening. So excellent, good stuff. So developing a club coaching philosophy, what is it? Why do we need it? And how do we develop it? So this is just my own opinion now. The next sentence: a club coaching philosophy is created from within. It will be created by the club, the coaches, and the players, and it must be realistic, achievable, and sustainable. So I believe that we need those three stakeholders within the club, with the coaches and with the players, all buying in and trying to create a club coaching philosophy. It must be realistic, and everybody's club coaching philosophy is going to be different. It's going to be unique to your club. You may be an urban club, a rural club, big and small numbers. That will all have an effect and will be a factor in what your club coaching philosophy looks like. Very important that it's achievable. We don't want to be developing a club coaching philosophy that is sort of pie in the sky stuff, and we know as a club we're never going to achieve it. And probably most importantly in this statement is it has to be sustainable. As clubs, we don't want to be going year after year, sitting down and trying to redevelop and redo a club coaching philosophy. It is something that there should be sustainable, which should help sustain the coaching and games in our clubs. So you'll see here we've got 4 words: values, behaviours, time invested, and culture. So in terms of our values, we need the key people, the key decision makers in our club involved in this process. So as a club, who decides picking them? Is it the executive committee? Is it the club chairman, or whoever that person may be? But as a club, you have to identify the key people that is going to add value to developing a club coaching philosophy in your club. Okay. Sorry, I'm just seeing a couple of messages coming through here, maybe a bit sound. So if you have any issues, I think maybe the best thing to do is just to log out and log back in again. It may be your own broadband or Wi-Fi. So if you have an issue, log out and try log back in again. Thank you. So it's about getting those key people that are in the club to get together, get their heads together, and try and develop a club coaching philosophy. If you're maybe a smaller club and you don't have, you think we only have one or two people in the club that maybe have the skill set or have the drive or ambition to try and do something like this, it's up to you as a club to try and go and recruit some of these people and educate them on a club coaching philosophy and the benefits of it, and then try and bring them people with you. We definitely need a coaching committee. The coaching committee is key in developing a club coaching philosophy, and we will touch on the role and the benefits of a club coaching committee further on in the webinar. But that club coaching committee are there, and they're there to try and drive the coaches and drive the values that the club want to underpin. Without an effective club coaching committee, I think as a club, you may struggle in terms of having a structure and an effective structure in place. And with your values, they need to be both club and coach driven. So the club need to be in full support of the coaches. The coaches also need to be in full support of the club and the direction they're trying to go. And we've all seen the examples in clubs where we've got a real driven group of coaches, but they feel they don't get the support for the club, which can sometimes lead then to maybe them taking the foot off the pedal or a wee bit of demotivated or whatever. So the club and the coach, they have to be both working together and working on the same path. In terms of our behaviours then, so our club coaching philosophy, it has to be agreed, so from the start of the year or whenever you sit down to try and implement this, it has to be agreed. We can't have different groups within our clubs behaving in different ways and going off on different paths. So from the onset, the club coaching philosophy, it must be agreed. Now, it has to be fluid, it has to be open to change, that the key people have to be open to constructive feedback, sometimes maybe criticism. It's not always going to suit every member of the club, or everyone's not always going to, I suppose, buy into exactly what the club want to do. But if it's agreed and the club have said, listen, here's the path we're going to go down, yes, they say it has to be open to change, but I think as a group of coaches, we have to really buy into that and behave in that way that the club have set us out to behave in. So there's a joined up approach in all of this. So without the communication between the coaches, the players, the parents, it's going to be difficult to get that agreement. Who do you see discipline there as a type of behaviour? So we look at discipline in terms of two ways. So discipline on the pitch and discipline off the pitch. So as a group of coaches off the pitch, how do we act around each other? How do we behave with each other? How do we communicate with each other? Do we share ideas? Do we have a community of practice in our clubs where we're sharing the ideas that the stronger coaches are trying to mentor and work with maybe the beginner coaches in the club? Do we look at what impact our behaviour has on the rest of the club and has on our players? Positive behaviours from our coaches is only going to have a positive effect on our players, but look at the flip side of that. A negative behaviour from a coach, what will that do to our players? And it's probably, as a club, our behaviours will deem how we want to be perceived or how we are perceived outside our club. So as a group of coaches, your behaviours are huge in terms of your discipline and how you want to be perceived. And then I suppose our discipline on the pitch, that has I suppose encompasses both players and coaches. So as a group of coaches and a club, what is the message we're giving in terms of discipline to our coaches and to our players when they're on the pitch? And again, how do you want your club to be perceived if somebody from 20-30 miles down the road are talking about your under 10 team or your senior team or whatever it is? So that discipline's key when it comes to a club coaching philosophy. In terms of commitment then, that behaviour in terms of being long-term committed, everyone in the club having a buy into it, everyone in the club just putting their shoulder to the wheel and getting what's done. At the end of the day, we all have to realise that it's not Garreth Thornton's club, it's a collective club, and we need people committed, and we need people just to say, right, listen, let's get this done. So it's one of them behaviours that I think commitment's huge. Time invested then, so it's the amount of time that the club are investing in the coaches and in the players. So is your club, do you as a club invest time in your coaches? Do you upskill your coaches? Do you create that positive environment for your coaches that keeps them motivated and that keeps them wanting to come back, volunteering week on week, month on month, and year on year? You see it, the word coaching officer there. That's where the coaching officer comes in, a motivated, strong character that is going to challenge the coaches within the club. He's going to keep pushing them to get better and better. And if the coaches see that the coaching officer is pushing and the club are pushing to try and develop them and push them on, generally you do find that there's a better outcome from the coaches. And then I suppose player centered. When we talk about the player centered, everything, the club coaching philosophy, the player should be in the centre of it. So the values, the behaviours, the time invested from the club and the coaches, it's all there to try and help and develop our players. The more we can develop and look after our players, the more we're going to get out of them, the more we're going to develop them as footballers or camogues or hurlers or whatever it may be. And probably more importantly, the more we're going to develop them as people. So it's a massive thing that we're looking to look at the holistic side of it as well. So we can develop our players, develop better players, and in turn develop better people. And then culture. So probably, we look at the standards in a club, and as a club, what sort of standards do we set for our coaches? What sort of standards do we set for our players? And there's no blueprint on this. It's probably a case of, as a club, you sitting down and deciding, well, what is an acceptable standard for a coach in this club? What is an acceptable standard for a player in this club? And then you're looking at their values and their behaviours and how them standards all fit in. Who we are. So it's who as a club we are. We develop this through meeting and planning the way forward and developing this club coaching philosophy. Development v winning. So what type of culture does your club have in terms of development v winning? So very, very difficult one to strike a balance between. You get asked the question all the time, at what age does the development stop and the winning starts? You hear some crazy stories from under-7 tournaments and it's all win. And so it's probably a question I'd be asking you as a coach and to bring it back to your club. What is our culture when it comes to development v winning? At what age does development stop happening and winning becomes at all costs? Or are you a club where development never stops? That development goes hand in hand with winning. Probably back to the goals you set at the start of the year. An under-15 team that maybe are a weak team. A successful season for them is maybe fielding in every single game, whilst a successful season for another club is winning an A championship. So you're probably looking there at what the culture's like in that club in terms of the development versus winning. And then the last bullet point there. So it's something we see all the time in terms of, we see winning at all costs, and we hear coaches giving off about it's all win. But does your club have a culture of development at all costs? And I have yet to see too many clubs where I've seen this term used, development at all costs. We see the win at all costs, but as a club, we'll do whatever we can to win games when we get further up the pathway and into that youth adult. But will we do whatever we can as a club to develop our players or develop our coaches at all costs? So again, it's probably something that you can think about. You know your own club and how it operates and the dynamic in it. So but it's something I'd like you to take away and have a think about in terms of development at all costs. So a club coaching philosophy, how do we develop it? So this quote here is from a basketball coach I picked up. So you don't create a philosophy with signs and slogans. You create a philosophy with people and leadership. So, the signs and the slogans and the fancy buzzwords, they're all great. They look really good. But when you drill down to it, what do they really mean? And we've seen changing rooms with them all over the wall and this sort of stuff. And clubs have lovely fancy boards with different taglines up. And I say they look great. They're maybe really good for PR in your club or for marketing your club and for player recruitment and that sort of stuff. But really, what do they mean? So in my own opinion, and following on for this, you create a philosophy with people and leadership. You get key people with good leadership qualities and you get them to drive the thing forward. How do we do it? There's no high level scientific way of doing it. We meet, we talk, and we keep talking. So the only way to develop a club coaching philosophy is meet as a group, we talk it through. There's going to be arguments, there's going to be issues, but we just need to keep talking through it until we finally get to a place where we can try and develop it. And I suppose that meet, talk, and keep talking, it's never ending. It's, we get one or two things sorted, we're happy with one thing, right, we need to meet and talk about the next thing. So it's something that it never probably ends. And then you see below them the plan, do, review. So, following from them meetings and from the talks we're having, we're setting a plan in place, we're setting actions and objectives to go and do them. And then once they're done, probably the thing that I wouldn't see happening in GA clubs is we don't really review anything. We maybe have that meeting at the end of the year. How did this year go? And it's all the negative stuff. So as a club, do you sit down and do you meet, every second or third month and say, right, but how's the last month went? How's the last 2 months went? Right, what's the plan for the next month, the next 6 weeks, or whatever it is, So I think if we try and keep that model in our head, plan, do, review, and say it's not scientific, it's not highfalutin, it's basic, getting around a table and talking things out and setting a plan in place and then moving on to the next part of it. Okay, so how do we develop it then? So further on from this, we need a coaching officer and we need a coaching committee. So the roles of the coaching officer, you'll see on the left-hand side, the coaching officer chairs the coaching committee. They will oversee the development of a coaching plan and philosophy. They'll promote coach education in the club. So as a coaching officer, or if you are a coaching officer on the webinar, or if you're a coach and your club has a coaching officer, does your coaching officer, do they promote coach education in the club? Are they constantly berating you with messages in terms of courses that's coming up, that maybe webinars that's on, or different things that's happening? So the role of the coaching officer is to try and keep engaging with the coaches and keep developing them. Another one is to monitor and review the coaching standards in the club. So back to the previous slide there, the plan, do, review. So when it's done, are we reviewing what's going on and then trying to develop it? Liaising with your county GDMs. So as a coaching officer, you should be building a relationship with your county games development manager and your county coaches. You never know when you're going to need them. They're the people in the county that oversee coach education and can help you with anything that you're going to need help with. And then probably a very important role is you need to be a good delegator. There's loads of things to be done as a coaching officer. You're probably not going to get them all done on your own. And you will find, I suppose, and we've all sat in committee rooms in October, November, where we have our end of year meeting, and then we start talking about the following year, and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And then we meet 12 months later and we have the same meeting and we say the same things. And we end up giving off about the person who's leading it, saying, well, such and such never does anything, And probably the role of a coaching officer in the club now, it's becoming very, very important. It's very, very broad. So it's key that you do delegate some of the tasks out and you bring good people with you, which leads us on then to the formation of a coaching committee. So again, my own opinion on forming a coaching committee, it's one person from each age group. So one person from under 7s right up through to under 17s. Does it need to be the head coach or the manager or the most experienced person? No, it doesn't. It needs to be someone who's going to get stuff done. So you want somebody in that coaching committee from that age group who is going to get stuff done. You don't want any, I suppose, people there who's there to waste time or energy sappers. You want people there who's going to come to a meeting, given a task, and go get it done. Advice would be to meet monthly between October and February. So, during your club's winter program or in the off season, as coaches, we probably have a bit more time. Those 4 or 5 months between October and February, if we hold our monthly meetings and we can get our coaching philosophy sorted, or our plan for the year sorted, or sort out a coach education program or whatever it may be, we can do a lot of the legwork between those months. That whenever March comes and the playing season starts and we're back out in the grass, it is going to be difficult to be pulling coaches together on a monthly basis on top of the 2 or 3 nights, maybe 4 nights that they're out with the underage teams in the club. So the advice would be to maybe meet 3 times between March and September. And again, have your agenda set out in advance of those meetings, that there's no time wasting, and keep it tight, because as we probably all, our time's precious enough without going to a meeting and sitting for 2-3 hours and really having nothing coming out of it. Another role of the coaching committee then is to assist in devising the plan and the philosophy, to appoint and recruit coaches and managers. So again, this happens in some clubs, or in some clubs I still see where if you want to take the under 14s, you say I'm taking them, and that's just it. Whilst in other clubs, the coaching committee will sit down and they look at the coaches they have at their disposal. They look at the skill set of the coaches and what team they feel in the club that coach would suit best with, and then they'll appoint accordingly. So if your club is doing that, great. If not, again, it's something that you could look at. And then the coaching committee will help to develop a club school link. So again, a very, very important thing that all of our clubs should have. And it's probably more than just having the notice board in the school foyer or the school hall. As clubs, we probably should be looking to have some sort of presence in our primary schools in a coaching capacity, be it during the day or through after school, or somebody maybe giving a hand with the coming to Bunskull team, that somebody there is going to have that direct link between the club and the school. Okay, so in terms of long-term development then, so how our club coaching philosophy then will assist with long-term development from the player. So you'll see the bottom right-hand corner there, the picture of the nursery taking place and the fundamentals, and then in the top left-hand corner then Michael Murphy, probably as an elite player we have in the province. So you know that's the continuum we're looking at players to go along. So you'll see the first word there's fun. So from the long-term development of the player, it has to be fun. You know, at that underage, if it's not fun, you know, the chances of your kids not coming back to you week on week are going to increase. If you find that your sessions aren't fun and your kids aren't coming back week on week, instead of maybe blaming mommy or daddy or blaming the parent, it's maybe time that you need to take a look at yourself as a coach and say, well, what sort of environment am I creating for these players here that they're not coming back week on week? In terms of being player centered, so again, the player needs to be at the middle of every single session, you know, be it that it's a skill development session or a game session, whatever it may be, the player has to be in the middle of it. And as coaches, we have to be trying to develop the key milestones with our players from a skill point of view and from an athletic point of view. How do we do this? Probably at the child age group, you know, it's all done through our fun games or through our fun warm-ups and our skill development stuff, and then gently probably introducing them to games. How do we measure this then? And in my own opinion is the only way we can measure this is through skills testing. You know, and as coaches, you know, do we skills test our players? Do we skills test our players regularly? And do we record it? Do we reevaluate it? And do we look at it a couple of times a year? So I think 3 times a year is probably plenty, start, middle, and end. You know, for a couple of reasons. As a coach, it's a good barometer to see, is your coaching effective? You know, so if you look at maybe your under sevens and you're doing a wee bit of bouncing or kicking or whatever, and we're trying to work bilaterally all the time, and we've got wee Johnny there who's 4 out of 5 with his right hand, he's able to bounce and catch, and he goes on to his left side and he's only able to bounce and catch 1 time out of 5, for example. Whenever you retest him 3 months later and he's still only 1 out of 5 on his weak side, and again then test the end of the year, he's only 1 out of 5 at his on his weak side. As a coach, you know, you maybe posing yourself the question, well, did we provide that group of players with enough activities and enough chances to develop their weak side? You know, so it allows you to look at things like that. It also is a very good way of getting mummy and daddy involved. You know, you skills test your players, you can feed back that information to mummy or daddy. So listen, we've had a wee skills test here. You know, if you get a chance, get them into the garden, get them practicing this, practicing that. We're going to skills test them again in 6 or 8 weeks. And I say it doesn't have to be a high level template. I have an example of one. It's on an Excel sheet. You know, you can do the skills testing for your whole squad of players in the one session. So it's something that's really simple and basic. And obviously, as you go through the player pathway, you make it more advanced for your group. In terms of the development of the player, then from a skill and athletic and holistic development, so I would always ask coaches the question: what do you want your players to look like? So, you know, we see Michael Murphy up there in the corner, probably an ideal player that we'd love the stage of our players to look like: big, strong, athletic, both sides, and all them things. But as coaches, we do have the power there as they're coming through the player pathway to develop their skills, to develop them both sides, you know, through all our skill development activities, then progressing them into we've a couple of technical issues here with the PowerPoint, so just bear with me if you don't mind. Okay, so apology about that. So as coaches, we have to be bringing them through the pathway. We have to be looking at the different milestones that as they go from 7s to 9s, 11s to 13s. As coaches, can we confidently say, yes, we have my players leaving me at under 9 are competent in X, Y, and Z. And I think if you have that question in the back of your mind, what do you want your players to look like from a skill point of view? We want them to be competent on both sides. And all them sorts of things. I think that will help in terms of developing the player. From an athletic point of view, then again, so if you think of our under 7s and maybe you talk about athletic development, you look at their movement patterns. We want our players to be able to move well. And again, a question: what do you want your players to look like when they move? You want them to tick all the boxes that when they move, they look athletic. So again, as coaches, we have the power there to be able to develop that. And so as an example of that, we look at our agility, balance, coordination stuff. As coaches, do we really drill down and coach the technical points of agility, balance, coordination through our warm-ups, or are we happy just to set out a couple of cones and have the kids run in and out, or have our players at any ages who's run in and out the cones? And if we see a player who's maybe not turning properly or stopping properly, as coaches, are we spotting that and fixing it? In terms of, we'll do that with the skill. If we see a punt pass going wrong, we have no issue stepping in there. But if we see a player moving wrong or landing wrong or stopping wrong, as coaches, do we step in there and try and fix that? And then from the holistic development side of things, so in this talk, we look at resilience, we look at character, we look at learning from our mistakes, being honest, being hardworking. So all of them traits that you would want in an ideal player. As coaches, again, can we develop them through our sessions? We can. And it's about getting the players to make the right decisions, and if something goes against them, see how they react, and speaking to them and bring them away one-on-one, and all them sorts of things. So so what do you want your players to look like from a skill, athletic, and holistic development perspective? All this needs to be done through a staged approach. So we're going to have a short, medium, and long-term approach for each player, for each group of players. And players will dip in and out. There's a short-term goal for this player. He doesn't meet it. We may have to make it a wee bit into a medium-term goal or a long-term goal. So, there has to be a staged approach when it comes to player development from under 7 right through. And then I suppose the big one is empowering players. So it's a buzzword we hear from all the gurus out there in terms of, how they empower their players. And suppose you look at the top inter-county teams, and the stuff coming out of there, that's all done through a games-based approach to training, and then it's done through a use of questioning. So, our games-based approach to training, setting up games, putting our players in environments and situations that they're going to find themselves in games, and then coaching them through it. So yes, a skill development activity or a drill is brilliant and it needs to be done, but how much learning really takes place in that instant, and how really is that developing the player? So as coaches, we should be trying and we should be striving to use a games-based approach, and that's right through from under 7 up. And I suppose if you look at under 7s and look at games that are going to empower a player, and there's going to be decision making and problem solving and all them sorts of things in it. The gate game you might be familiar with. You've two cones of the same colour set out. You have one player either side of the gate. They have to roll the ball or bounce it or throw it or send it whatever way they want through the gates and then run to a different set of gates. Believe it or not, there's loads of decision making in that. The kids have to problem solve. They have to decide which cone to run to. There may be another kid at another set of gates. They have to decide, well, is it good for me to run there or is it good for me to run somewhere else? They have to run with their head up. So already they're starting to scan and see where they're going. They're using spatial awareness. So there's loads of things through a real simple 1v1 game with that, right up to then through a full game scenario with an adult team. In terms of use of questioning, so as a coach, are you a telling coach? Are you a questioning coach? And you talk about empowering players and getting players to make decisions for themselves. And, as coaches, we look at the top coaches and top managers. They generally stand quiet along a sideline. They don't get too animated. And then we go and watch an under 10 blitz and we see boys running marathons up and down the line, going mad, giving off, and then you have to ask yourself the question, what's the best approach? So if we look at questioning and how that empowers our players, think as yourself just now when you're sitting there, you finish a game or you play a 3 or 4 minute condition game in training. You bring your players in. What's the first thing you say to them? Do you ask the group a question? How did that activity go? Was that did we meet our aim? If your aim was maybe retaining possession, did we retain possession? Yes. How did we retain possession? Our movement off the ball was really good. Our passes all went to the chest. The players are giving you that information back instead of you coming in as a coach and saying, right lads, right girls, brilliant. Movement was really good. You give the ball to the chest. There was no drops. Everyone had their head up. The communication was brilliant. If you change your approach slightly, throw the question to the group first, and the group will come up with the answer, and it's just probably getting used to that, giving that wee bit of ownership to the players, and it also allows you to check for understanding. Well, you know what? I know these players know that about a retaining possession game or whatever the activity is, so I think the use of question is massive in terms of trying to develop the player. So in terms of player milestones that we've talked about from skill development, again, this is just my own opinion. It's very similar to the player pathway and stuff. So if you look from under 6 right up to under 12 there, you'll see different skills. So, as an under 6 or under 7 coach, is it achievable that when your players leave you at under 7, that they're competent in all of them skills? So the pick up, the roll, tummy throw, body catch, hand pass, right through. So my own opinion would be, by a player leaves under 7, you're hoping that they can at least be competent at most of these skills. If they're not, so be it. That player, we might have to take maybe a longer term staged approach with that player. They may need a wee bit more one-to-one coaching. But again, as a coach, in your head, you're saying, right, I need my players to be able to perform all of these skills. Secondly, then, as a coach, you need to be saying, asking yourself, do I know all the coaching points of these skills? Do I know how to progress this skill? And do I know how to regress this skill if it's too difficult? So, for example, if a player can't punt kick the ball, we bring them back to letting the ball bounce and then punt kick it. If they can't solo the ball, we let them have a bounce and then solo, or we let them tap the ball off their knee, whatever it may be. So as a coach, do you have them that in your toolbox that yes, Garreth can't punt the ball. Instead of just telling me to keep my head down and keep trying, you're able to bring the skill back, and I'm able to then still perform the skill at a lower level, but to me that's still success, so I'm not getting demotivated. And then I say throughout the age group, saying you're seeing that there's different skills added in, and my own opinion, the ideal scenario is that skill development never stops. We're just trying to get better, get faster, and become more competent at doing the skills under pressure in game scenarios from under 12 upwards. So I don't think it's something that we can ever neglect as our skill development. You will see there that I have stages of passing. It's the last one in each of them, and the reason I've talked about staging of passing is that as coaches, do we coach through the stages of passing? So we'll have our static activities, me kicking the ball back to my partner, nobody moving. Are we coaching the pass and move, that we're moving, and then passing, that we're passing to a moving player? As coaches, are you familiar with the stages of passing and then how to build them up and how to break them down? So again, I think it would be very beneficial for each club to sit down and come up with their own player milestones or their own player pathway, and then I think it equally effective would be that each management team sit down. So if you're the under 12 manager in your club this year, you sit down with your group of coaches and you say, right, what do we want? What skills do we want our players to be able to perform competently by the time they leave us at the end of the year? How do we measure it, and how are we going about doing it? And I think if you're doing those sorts of things, you go a long way to helping the long-term development of the player. And obviously, it's not here, but it goes to say that all of these skills are performed bilaterally. So we're trying to always get our players working off both our right and left. And then from athletic development, so we break athletic development down into our fundamental movement skills, our agility, balance, coordination, our running, our speed, our jumping, and our landing. So as I alluded to in the last slide there about, for example, our agility. As coaches, we're great at spotting and fixing all the skills of the game, but when we're doing our warm-ups, are we if just say a warm-up where the cones are all scattered out and you're asking the players to run in and out through the cones and you're calling a number, you're calling a colour, whatever it may be, if we see players taking a big long step into a cone, if we see players off balance when they're trying to turn, at that stage of the session, are you having a chat with your other coaches, maybe planning the rest of the session? Are you really observing the movement of your players? So for example, as a coach, do you know how to coach agility? So do you know that it's a small step in, that your knees are bent, your hips are low, and all them sorts of things. So again, that probably feeds back to the coaching officer and the coaching committee, that we're promoting coach education and trying to constantly upskill our coaches. And that goes to saying then as our running and our speed and our jumping and landing. And, I don't think we need to be going and getting athletics coaches or running coaches into our clubs and working on a one-off session with under 12s or whatever that is. I think as coaches, there's enough resources out there now that we can probably look and get the basics in terms of, what our head, our arms, our knees and our feet need to be doing and what the key coaching points are. And like that, our jumping and landing. And it's something I'm seeing coach more off now over the past couple of years is landing. So we all coach our jumping, but do we coach our players how to land properly and how to land safely, and how that there is going to, I suppose, prevent injury going forward? Then we have our functional movements, so our squat, lunge, push and pull. I'm involved with the club under sevens, and we've asked them before, running around, touch your bum off a cone. And if you look at that, what that movement pattern is, it's a squat. So already you're trying to get the players used to that movement. It's obviously totally safe. It's not loaded whatsoever, but you ask them that question, touch your bum off that cone without using your hands or without putting your hands down. That's essentially a squat. Touch your knee off a cone without touching your hands at the ground. That's a lunge. So as coaches, are we trying to be creative and innovative and sneak these movements into our sessions, so that when our players do get to, maybe under 14s, under 15s, and we're starting to look at maybe, getting them into gyms and looking at adding a wee bit of weight or whatever, that they've been performing these movement patterns effectively for, I suppose, 6 or 7 years. So again, that's back to the coaching officer in the club. Are we getting the right people in the club in to upskill our coaches on this? And again, this is just my opinion. I'm sure there's people on the call, if they sat down and they looked at and brought in other expertise in their own club, that could come up with different things that could fit into that. So in terms of long-term development then of the coach, I suppose, so again, it's back to that time invested. So, how much time do you invest in yourself as a coach? I see there's over 300 people in this evening. So that's absolutely brilliant. That the fact that there's people are taking that hour out of their evening to come in and try and pick one thing out of this, that they can hopefully make themselves a better coach when they leave here. And say any course that we would go to, any course I go to myself, I would always try and you're leaving with at least one thing which is going to help. Myself, I would always, just against my own opinion, I would always try and get to at least 3 coaching workshops that I feel are going to benefit me every year. I think if we're going to every workshop that's going, I think sometimes some of the things can become a wee bit diluted. I think sometimes it could confuse us as coaches, that maybe we're always trying to pull from other people, and we might lose our own identity as a coach, and we're not actually saying, backing yourself and saying, I'm doing this, and I can pull a wee bit from him and a wee bit from him. But I think you have to be true to yourself, and when you are going to these workshops and courses or whatever it is, that as long as you can pick something up that's going to help you, but you're still being true to what you believe in and what you're trying to achieve as a coach. So that sort of falls into our development opportunities. The amount of development opportunities since lockdown has been huge, from through Ulster and through GA and different people on online or run an awful lot of workshops. But again, hopefully when we get back out in the grass in the near future, are you sitting down and looking at what's happening at national level and a provincial level or within your county, and picking a couple of sessions and saying, right, I really want to get to that, and I think that person really good, and I could pick somebody from that, And alternatively to that is trying to, maybe as a club, can you get somebody from maybe external into your club and hold a coach-to-coach session? Or if you have the expertise in your club, you don't need to go outside. You can pull a couple of coach-to-coach sessions together in the club and pick a topic. And maybe this Saturday's on attack and play, and you get somebody who's really good at coaching attack and play, and you bring them in and get them just to work with the coaches and that sort of stuff. Self-reflection as a coach then, in terms of long-term development. So again, as coaches, do we reflect pre-session, do we reflect? Post-session, do we throw the balls in the car and away on we go, and we don't think about it again then for another couple of weeks? So my own opinion in this is that after every session you should be coming home. I'm not saying you need to take notes on it, but you should be reflecting and asking yourself the question, well, did the session go well? If it did go well, why did it go well? It might have went well because you were really planned. You knew exactly what was happening. You had a good focus on the session and you knew what the outcome was. And maybe just on that night, the boys or the girls were in good form as well and the thing went well for you. Alternatively, if your session didn't go well, why did it not go well? It could be that you weren't planned or prepared. You were rushing home from work that evening. You just didn't get the chance to plan. So there's a learning opportunity for you there to say, right, well, I'm not going to leave my session plan until a Wednesday evening before training. I'm going to do it on a Sunday night. As coaches, do we get feedback from our peers? So are you asking the other people in your management team, listen, watch me taking this warm-up and I want you to give me a wee bit of feedback. I want you to tell me one thing that you think I could improve on. It could be your communication. It could be maybe how your demeanor, how you're delivering the message. You could be maybe making things too complicated or whatever it may be. So I think if you're working with a good group of people in your club, I think that wee bit of peer reflection and peer learning is huge. I suppose if you want to take a step further, and I've done this a couple of times, and it is very embarrassing at the time, but you learn loads out of it, is get somebody to video you taking a session. And you're not looking at your body language, or are you facing the players, or are you facing away from the players, or any of those sorts of things. You're looking at your language, how long it's taking you to get the message across, what the message is. Are you checking for understanding? How many questions you're using, or are you telling everything? And even if you want to start small and get one of your other coaches just to video you, introducing the session and taking the warm up, take it away and look at it, and I think you'll learn massively from it. And then like that, have somebody video you giving a wee bit of feedback after an activity or after a game or after a conditioned game or whatever it is, and then see, how many questions are you using? Are you using any questions at all, or whatever it is? So I think that's a very, very important thing, that self-reflection, if we're looking to develop ourselves as coaches. In terms of coaching teams, goals and targets, and I suppose so. Every coach probably needs some sort of a goal or target at the start of the year, and may it be that your goal that year is for your team to win a league or championship, or you're looking to you're more developmental minded if you're working with a child team. But again, I think as coaching teams, we probably need to be sitting down and looking at what our goals for the year are. That's going to take communication, being in a couple of meetings, whatever it is, at the start of the year, and sitting down saying, right, well, how are we going to go about doing this? Probably then the review element of it, so as management teams, I know management teams I've worked in, we maybe would speak once properly after training per week and speak about the upcoming game or the previous game or whatever it is. And there's obviously communication all the time throughout or in between sessions. But, I think that once per week or whatever, something along those lines, to sit down and say, right, well, what are we doing this week? How do we need to go about it? What needs done, etc., etc. And then probably the monthly one, I think, is key as well. That you're probably reviewing the month you've just had, and then you're planning for the month ahead. And it doesn't need to be a formal sit-down meeting in the club. Then monthly meetings can be saying, right, well, on the last session of every month, we always know that we're going to sit for 20 minutes in the change room, or sit in the car park for 15 or 20 minutes, have a chat, see how things have went in the previous months, and then see what we're going to do then in the next month. And you're just constantly reviewing and planning. And I think as a management team, if you do have that level of communication and you do have that level of planning in place, a lot of the issues that you generally may find would probably tease themselves out because you are a lot more organised. So in terms of coach buy-in and how this links into a club coaching philosophy, so back to the very start, let the coaches have ownership, let them have their say. So in terms of developing a club coaching philosophy and getting coaches on board, if there's 2 or 3 key people in the club, if they're having a meeting and they're coming out and saying, right, here's what we're doing this year, here's how we're going about doing it, and away you go. You're going to get people's back up there. You're not really listening to them. You're not letting them have their say. At the end of the day, they're the people who's given up, 5, 8, 10 hours a week taking the under 10 team. So I think it's key that you have to sit down and you have to speak to your coaches and let them have their say. reward the coaches and make them feel valued. So, and again, you hear all the stories of what coaches, we all have our end of year, maybe a couple of drinks or whatever it is, but as a coaching officer, a coaching committee, if you're seeing one of the coaches in the car park, during the week or some day at training, are you something as simple as asking them how they're getting on, making them feel valued? Are you saying thank you to them? Just thanks, you've done really well that wee blitz on Saturdays, or doing really good work, instead of giving them the negative stuff, so something as simple as a thank you for seeing one of the club coaches about, it's worth its weight in gold. I know some of our clubs probably do it anyway. Maybe we provide the coaches with a wee bit of gear or some sort of a discount of the gear and whatever it may be. But a club I worked with a couple of years ago in trying to develop something like this, the coaching officer bought the club bought all of the coaches in the club a stopwatch and a whistle. So on Amazon, and he ordered whatever it was, 30, 40 stopwatches and 30 or 40 whistles, and handed them all at the start of the year. And he said it was sort of a two-pronged thing, that it made them feel valued, and so they were delighted they were getting something. But secondly, he was confident then that every coach would have a whistle on the pitch, because he had witnessed too many sessions where there was nobody turned up, or they all turned up with no whistle. So he felt then that he was ticking two boxes there. But again, I suppose in your own clubs, you will all have ways of or maybe different ideas you've heard of rewarding coaches or making them feel valued. Provide the opportunities and support coaches' learning. So put opportunities on for them. Have coach education workshops, provide coach education workshops, let them know when they're on, and all them sorts of things, and then support them, encourage them to go to them workshops. Again, if there's a cost involved as a club, we should all probably be looking at, want X amount of new people qualified to Foundation Award. We want 5 Award 1 coaches this year, and we want to progress 2 of our coaches on to Award 2 this year. As a club, I think in the grand scale of things, footing the bill for that, probably not a massive outgoing as a club, but again, you're supporting the coaches' learning, and then again, a way of making them feel valued and rewarded. I suppose we're trying to get our coaches to be long-term committed, so we want our coaches there, and we want them to stay on board. There are going to be people who are going to fall off the system for one reason or another, personal issues, or maybe work commitments or whatever it may be. But as best we can, we need to try and retain our coaches, because as clubs, we don't want to be going back every year trying to recruit new parents. Every year a new parent comes in, and without new parents coming in, don't get me wrong, our clubs wouldn't function, because we need them. But we need to try and retain our coaches. The longer somebody is coaching, the more experience they're going to get, and all them sorts of things. So as a club, we need to try really hard to keep them on board. And then I suppose long-term development from the club, and how a coaching philosophy is going to develop your club going forward. So I say without a coaching committee, and without those group of people being long-term committed, it's not going to develop our club. Is having a club coaching philosophy, is it the be all and end all of developing your club? No, it's not. But I think from a coaching and games perspective, it will add more structure, it'll add more focus, it'll be more organised, and in turn, I think you should, or hopefully will get a wee bit more out of the coaches. We need to be looking at coach and player retention. So if we find our clubs, or if we're losing players, at certain age groups, as a club, we probably need to be looking at, well, why? What's the why behind this? Is it because of our coaches? Is it because of social factors, or whatever it is? But it's something as clubs we need to be keeping an eye on. So how to develop our club long term? It's we meet, we plan, we review, and we support each other. Again, it's nothing overly highfalutin or high level. It's quite simple and straightforward. And I think sometimes in the GA, and maybe social media plays a part in this, we're always looking to do something different, or what's such and such doing, and he said do this, but I think in reality, when we really drill down into it, if we can keep it really basic when we're trying to develop these types of things, we meet, we get the right people on board, we keep talking about it, we keep planning it, and we keep just working at it. And I suppose you'll see the bottom one there says our club. Probably the most important thing a lot, it's not my club, and it's not, it's not just 1 or 2 people, and sometimes clubs will work like that. But again, I think if we can open up the lines of communication, and we get more people on board, and get more people talking to each other and sitting down with each other, I think we can maybe spread the wings a wee bit, and but at the end of the day, it's our club as a whole, and it's not just one person's, and so the club's going to be there long after that person. suppose the next steps then, at the minute, and probably for the last number of years, Ulster GA have had a club support program where we will assist clubs in developing a club coaching philosophy and a club coaching plan. And I've seen some of the names on the workshop, or number of the people registered tonight would have gone through that program with us. You know, so we'll come into your club and we'll do a review of the coaching and games, and we'll assist you in trying to develop something like this. You know, so again, we can only obviously provide you with a couple of sessions, but you know, the club really need to take ownership. We're just there as facilitators to get you up and going. So say if it's something that interests your club, by all means you can send me an email and we can try and get something sorted for you. In terms of resources, so I said there's massive amount of resource out there now at the minute. So from the Learning GA website, the GA YouTube channel, the Ulster GA YouTube channel, which is constantly getting updated, and there's some great resource on it. The Dublin GA coaching website I find to be very good. And again, this is just resource that I would look at. And then I suppose Twitter is excellent. There's Paul Gilgannon, his new book, Be the Best You Can Be in Sports, which is a very, very good read. If anyone hasn't got it, I would definitely recommend it. And then different guys I would follow on social media, and click in and look to there to see what wee things I can pick up from. And I'm sure most of you are probably following them, or if not, give them a follow. They do come up with some great stuff. Questions then. So listen, there were a lot of questions come in at the time of registration. I hope I have answered some of the questions that had come in through the registration here. So I'm just going to go in and go through some of these questions. I will see what maybe we so I'll email out skills test to you. Yep. How do you work with a child who has little interest and shows little improvement? Listen, my only thing there is find something that is successful for that child, you know, so that child may only want to help you lift the cones. You know, let that child lift the cones, and next week, you know, engage with them again and find out something that they want to do that they do enjoy, you know. Once you gain a wee bit of interest in that and being there, you generally find you can get them in. You know, in terms of little improvement, again, it's back to that. We all our players and kids, they will develop at a different rate. It's probably trying to work with that player maybe on a more one-to-one basis, or pull them out in small groups and do that wee bit of individual skills coaching with them. Because I'm just scrolling through here, sorry, just to see. So say that the things will be sent out. So any additional comments for dual club, senior football with junior hurling, or senior hurling and junior football? I'm not 100% sure what you mean by that. You know, I think a club coaching philosophy will be from the top down or the bottom up. You know, and you're hoping if it's a case of maybe working together, or there's aggro between the footballers and the hurlers, or whatever it is. You know, I think it's maybe a case of it's back to that communication and sitting down and putting things out in black and white and looking at what everyone's commitments are, and trying to get the best from everybody. Again, I'm not 100% sure, Seamus, what you mean by that, but if you want to drop me an email offline, Seamus, and if there's something more you need, I'll do my best to get the answer. Listen, guys, I think that there's not too many more questions have come through there. So I think that there were lots of questions did come through during registration. So say if anyone does have any new questions, feel free to ask there now. How often would you carry out skills tests per year? I would carry them out 3 times a year, start, middle, and end. You know, so I would just be looking at their start of the year, middle of the year, and the end of the year, and that gives you a good gauge for improvement and development in between those skills tests. Balance between football and hurling for underage, and which requires most time. Again, that's probably up to the club to decide, you know, what they feel that they want to try and push more. Is it the football side of things or the hurling side of things? there's a lot of successful clubs. You look at Slotneil and Ulster; they're able to balance both. So I think probably in the clubs that are getting it right, they're not given one more time than the other. They're probably just working better with each other to try and develop both. Would you need to keep written records of the assessments? Yes, I would just have an Excel sheet where I would just have the mark down and hold on to them. Yeah. So you can compare then what you have from the start, the middle, and the end. And again, it's a very good motivational tool to use with the players, and the fact that you can show them how much they're developing. A sample plan of a coaching plan or coaching philosophy. Yeah, so if you want to drop me an email, I can send something out to you. Yes, Ed, no problem. I'll get the slides. I get the presentation sent out as well. That's no problem at all. Okay, listen, guys. Thank you very much. We're just around an hour there, and I think that's plenty. So, listen. Thanks very much for thank you very much for engaging and staying on board with us. My email address is there, and say feel free to say if your club would like any support, feel free to drop me an email and we can try and get that sorted for you. I say if you have any further questions, feel free to be in contact. Thank you.